And that's one of the things about religion that we have to remember when we're talking about that makes it such a hot topic issue. It's because we're talking about law. Who gets to be God? Who gets to be God's deputies? Who is the Most High? Who is the divine authority? It's all about the claim to the Most High. The only way that somebody can be higher than us is if we give away our power. Because there's nobody, we're all equal. But we're not equal in our knowledge, so ultimately I think it does have to be a hierarchy, but it has to be a cooperative hierarchy like a bee colony. It's about what our value system is, what we care about.
Hello, Hive Mind. Today is August 13th, 2020. I am your host, Nate Cap, joined by co-host Brandon Martin. Welcome to the 15th Cubbywhole Podcast, where important topics are unveiled, discussed, and tested. Our website is cubbywhole.com. That's cubbywhole.com. On the last show, we got into and broke down the 7 Hermetic principles, which are mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, gender, and then the 8th principle, which is the generative principle, or the principle of true care. If you haven't already and you want to understand the rest of this content, we highly recommend starting at podcast 1 or podcast 9 for natural law, as it won't be much of benefit to not have the prerequisites needed to understand the rest of what we share here for that topic. But definitely start at 1 to get the better understanding of the rest of the show. Also, I know people love solutions, and we will be covering many solutions in the future, but it is also important to understand that this whole show is one big solution of solutions. It's a repository of important, evolutionary content that when taken in and applied to life, it expands consciousness into higher frequencies of love and freedom. That's what we're about here. So on this show, I'm going to ask Brandon a series of general questions that get asked a lot when it comes to natural law. How's it going, Brandon?
I'm doing great, Nate, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be back on the show with you to help spread this information far and wide to all like minds.
For sure. So here's the first question I'm going to ask. How is lying a harmful action if it's not an actual physical action?
Well, that's a very interesting question that you have proposed there. The first thing is I would consider it a form of action. I think that we do kind of negate the idea that linguistics is a form of action. We usually don't associate those two, but when it comes to rights, we do have to understand that anything that's done with our physical body is a form of action, and linguistics is performed with our physical body, so it is a form of action. It is our consciousness being directed through will to make physical change in our environment. So when it comes to lying, and this is a question that I get asked quite a bit. How is lying a violation of somebody else's rights? Well, the first thing is that you are taking another's ability to engage in an informed decision-making process, which does not belong to anybody else besides that individual themselves. So we kind of explained this when we went through the transgressions a little bit. So whenever a person is in a situation where there is nobody initiating violence upon them, and then the individual lies to a group or an individual or a single person, then that would be considered a violation of the other being's rights when they need that information to make a proper decision and make a proper choice from that. Let's say, I gave this example the last time, which is if there was a young girl and you guys were, out, let's say, meeting each other on a college campus or something like this, and then she lied to you about her age, and then you guys proceeded to go on a date, and things escalated, and later on you found out that she was underage. She was 17 and she wasn't 18. Well, that was a violation of your right because you did not know what the needed information is to make a healthy, discernible choice in that situation to steer away from harm being done, because that could be harmful upon you. You could be, held liable for sleeping with an underage individual. So that can be harmful onto you. So you're violating somebody else's right to actually make that decision. Now, I will say that there are certain situations when you are being violated, when you yourself have been initiated with violence, that maybe you do need to lie in that situation. But we have to understand that violence has been initiated, meaning that now you must take self-defensive action to prevent harm from being done. So that's when, lying, I wouldn't like to use the word lying there. I would call it something else. Maybe we can come up with a new term for that. I'm sure somebody else could, help me out with another phrase to place in there. But for the purpose of this conversation, we'll just use lying. Lying at that point may actually protect your rights, protect your ability. So let's say somebody is threatening you with violence through gunpoint or something like that to try to get to your children or something like that. And you need to lie to protect your children from this individual in certain scenarios like this. That's your self-defense. That's self-defense. That's not a violation of anybody's right. So we just have to be really oriented when it comes to these terms, because our language is irreputably destroyed pretty much, in our modern day. So we can use these terms, but we don't really have a finite understanding of them. That's what we need. We need a definition of that. We need to bring it down into a finite understanding of what we're talking about here. So I see a lot of people using these terms vastly and not really getting to the actual application, the pragmatic application of them into reality. And when we understand them that way, we can understand how they are either a violation of somebody else's rights or just an act of force to create, goodness and wholeness, and an action that does not violate anybody else's rights is what I'm trying to say.
So basically, lying is a harmful action because it's putting someone else at risk through not allowing them to make a truthful, critical decision to protect themselves. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, that's definitely part of it, because you are limiting the other sentient being's capability in engaging in information that is needed for them to make an accurate choice. So whenever we have the control of information, you're pretty much controlling the amount of potentials that other people have to make an accurate choice, because that's what we're based off of, is the ability to take in information, process it, and then put it out. Human beings are programmable from information. And if you're putting in corrupted information, if you're putting in lies, then you will get garbage out, from that. The result from that, the consequences of that will be bad. And if you are putting in truth into the system, then you will get goodness from that. You will have an accurate, decision-making process, and you will have an orderly outcome because of that.
Exactly. The more we lie, the more we put other people in harm's way, because the lie is obviously not based in truth, because it doesn't allow people to have an accurate understanding of what is actually taking place. Therefore, how or what a person does with the lie they're told can lead to something dangerous or harmful.
Well, I want to add into this is like we see this with mainstream media, right? And
Exactly.
we get like we have these groups in the truth community. I see this in the truth movement where they protect the mainstream media, the lies, under this idea of freedom of speech. Well, your freedom of speech, key word there, freedom, is about rights. It is about that which is correct. That's what freedom is based off of, is what is correct. It's based off of morality. So if you are lying to people, and because of those lies, the freedom that you have is being destroyed, then you do not have that right. It's not your right to do that. It's not the freedom of speech, because it's not moral. And this is a big issue that we find with a lot of people. Yes, you have the right to introduce controversial information that's going to make people feel uncomfortable and things like that. But making people feel uncomfortable is not destroying anybody's rights. Okay, bringing in the truth when you have been programmed with lies for so long is not destroying anybody's rights. It's actually going to set you free from the illusions that you believe, that you've been mind controlled with. So we have to understand like what freedom of speech actually means. It means responsibility is what it means. Mm-hmm. And people don't have responsibility with freedom, and that's why we're losing freedoms, is because they don't want to take responsibilities for their freedoms. They think they can do whatever they want without consequences. And that's not true. There's always going to be consequences whenever we perform anything in physical manifestation.
Exactly. Very well said. It's so important to understand how lying leads to long-lasting harmful effects, especially when we understand how harmful lies are to us while under mind control.
Well, let's ask this, Nate. What is a lie based off of? Well, it's based off of fear.
Right.
It's based off of a fear-based consciousness, because someone who is lying is scared of something, because they don't want somebody else to know, because obviously there must be something wrong by that, This is just generally going off the definition that we are using here, which is taking another ability's capacity to make an informed decision-making process. We're not talking about those situations where you've been violated and you may need to lie to get out of that, because there are situations like that. But we're talking generally where you're not being violated, right? Then you yourself must be in a state of fear consciousness to want to lie, And I mean, we see this all over the board. And it's something that I think has been done to us through trauma-based mind control, and maybe even deeper seeds of traumatic history of our species over a long period of time, where we are just so in darkness that, we feel that we have to protect ourselves, which is an illusion. This isn't actually protection, through like lying to other people, or we want to get something from other people, and we don't think that we can get that from them unless we lie. So it's all based in control and fear. And that's what that's based off of, because you're trying to control another person. You're trying to control what they think and what they do with what they think and how they feel.
Absolutely. And something we're going to get deep into on future shows is mind control. And when I say mind control, I'm talking about others controlling our mind. Of course, what we unveil about mind control has everything to do with us taking back our mind with our own control. And like Brandon said, it's about fear and control. It's about those who understand the human mind and desire control of us. But it's based in fear and lies. We're being lied to through fear of us learning this type of information. Because if we deeply learn the techniques of mind control, we won't need them to control us anymore. We won't need them to tell us what to think, what to believe, and how to feel. The main point is lying leads to harm, especially under fear, with the intent to control. So the next question I have, were you going to add something? I was just going to say,
the whole idea of man controlling things in the extent is part of the problem with our species, because we believe we have the authority over what other people think and how they feel and what they do, when we don't. And that's what I mean by controlling the extant, is controlling anything external of oneself,
Right.
that we're trying to manipulate other sentient beings with our own consciousness. And it is a form of mind control. Lying is a form of mind control. It is just a really, really, low degree or low level of mind control. But that's what mind control is. The base of it is about lying, You're
Right.
programming people with lies so that they do what you want them to do. So, I mean, this is a big thing. And I feel that it does need to be hammered on a little bit more, because I see people putting out lies left and right, and sometimes they're even unconscious about what they're putting out as a lie, right? That they're like ancillary liars, they're the extension of the liar itself. The lie gets propagated into the field and into the society, and then you get these secondary liars that take that information as true, and then they go and they start putting it out there when they've never done their due diligence to know whether it's true or not. And they've never done their homework. And this is a real big problem, especially in the truth community, supposed quote unquote truth community, right? And I hate to really hammer on that, but I mean, it is sad to see that they're just so gullible. People in these communities, doesn't even have to be the truth community, but any of these communities, they're so gullible and naive. They're reaching out to find solutions and answers, but because they're in that receptive process of their consciousness, their defenses are down, their firewalls are down. So they're allowing viruses to get into their minds. And then what do you see in society? More viruses being put out,
Right. Yeah.
And we don't have any kind of antiviral programs running. And that's what we need. We need antiviral programs running in our minds constantly, because we're in an information war. And people need to get that through their heads, that this is a war of information, because information controls consciousness. So it's a war on consciousness through information.
Right. And something I want to add is some other actions of lying. I don't believe a lot of these people are lying on purpose, but they are lying because their logic isn't aligned with their research. And there's these types of people, what I like to call, obviously what most people know, conspiracy theorists, but then you also have the non-conspiracy theorists. You have the conspiracy theorists who just run with an idea that someone shared, and they don't have any research into it at all, and then they go and act like this is the ultimate truth of what's really going on, and there might be some truth to it, but the thing is, they themselves have not researched it enough to be able to explain it to people. But let's just say that there's the flat earth conspiracy theorists who go running with this idea, and it gets disproven, right? And so there might be a little bit of truth in some of the things they say, but really you can disprove what they are talking about very easily. But then you have those same people talking about fluoride and, talking about how bad that is for our pineal gland, which that has empirical evidence. That is true. All right. Well, so you have a conspiracy theorist who's talking about fluoride, but also simultaneously talking about the flat earth, which then that gives people the option to put them in a box. So anyone talking about fluoride is automatically a flat earther. Well, obviously that's not true, but that's how people categorize people. That's how people judge people. That's, I see it all the time, especially politically. Like, if you are, pro-gun, that means you're pro-Trump. Well, obviously that's part of the other non-conspiracy conspiracy theorists. Non-conspiracy conspiracy theorists are the people who I would say are the ones who run with everything that the mainstream media says as truth. And obviously they are definitely wrong a lot of the times because they have not done any research, any real research. The non-conspiracy conspiracy theorists are the ones that will, go to who they believe is the authority rather than going and looking at all sides of the spectrum. They're going to someone who they believe has all the answers, when really it's about understanding how to look for the answers really, deep within. The point is that you have these non-conspiracy conspiracy theorists who believe and have faith in these authority media outlets, these mainstream authority media outlets. And then you have these conspiracy theorists who also have belief and faith in these, these memes that are going around with these little, pockets of truth that probably have truth, but they're not completely based in truth. And, obviously, something I definitely want to get into is cul-de-sacs. Like you're stuck on one topic where people talk about it and sensationalize it all the time and not really, go and look at in all the avenues of information to find the truth, to go further, to go deeper in your research.
Right. So maybe we should clarify a little bit here. Because, these people, like the people you're talking about, they are taking something from a liar and then propagating that lie as a truth. And we have to understand that when it comes to a lie itself, it's a conscious act when it comes to that. It's a conscious decision. I'm going to lie about this. And it might be a split second. And then, when that's taken as truth by other people, they don't even realize that they've become a antenna or a radio for a transmitter of that lie. Mm-hmm. They've amplified that lie. They're not the initiators of that lie themselves, but now they're a means for that lie to spread out, which means they're responsible for what's going on. They're responsible for how that is taking place and taking hold in society. So just think of all the people that fall into the mainstream media, right? And then they all watch it, and then they go out and they talk about it and they bicker about it everywhere. They are the amplifiers of the lies, and that's how it gets done. And that, because where we put our consciousness at, the energy will go there, and it's going to amplify that. It's going to make it depending on how we're looking at that, our perception of that. If we believe full-heartedly in that lie, and then we go out and we speak it as a truth, it's going to amplify that into our field of consciousness. And we need to be very, very responsible when it comes to our field of information, especially right now. And I like what you were talking about with the conspiracy theorists and the non-conspiracy theorists, and you're just dead on with that.
It's very, especially, now with what's going on with the pandemic, you're seeing it everywhere. You're seeing people who are all about mainstream science, and then you're seeing the people who are called the conspiracy theorists, who are coming from the underground, and they have radical ideas. But then if you're not looking into those on both sides, both ideas, the radical ideas and then the mainstream ideas, then you don't have a well-rounded idea of what's really going on. And that means that if you're picking one side and leaving out the other, well, that's a form of lying, because now you're saying that you know what the other side is. You already have it all figured out, right? And, that can lead to harm, because it's about being in an imbalance. You're not balanced to have a critical decision-making process of figuring out what is true and then spreading that truth. If you're picking one side or the other, you're only taking half of the truth, which is there's a lie hidden in there. And you have to, that's right, you have to figure out what that is. You have to weed it out and come to a critical decision that is well-rounded and where you have logic from both sides and bring it into the middle to see exactly what's going on, so you have a better understanding. It's not about being right or being wrong. It's about understanding that, what the truth is between the two, between the lie and the truth,
Right. Well, yeah, it reminds me of that quote from Joseph Goebbels, right, from the Third Reich and their crazy propaganda campaign. And I think he said, make the lie big, keep it simple, keep saying it, and eventually they will believe it.
That's so true. And that's exactly, okay, for instance, and I'm just using this as an example because it's fresh in everyone's mind. When you keep on hearing the word cases, right? It's just like 9/11 when they said terrorism. Now it's cases, big numbers, cases. And everybody is just like really hooked on that whole idea that cases means deaths. That's what people are so afraid of. And it's like, you're not using logic. You're not understanding that there is almost less than 1% deaths in the whole world from this thing, right? So, and I digress. You have to understand that is leading to harmful action, because now we are all being, now you have people saying that you can be, jailed for attempted murder for not wearing a mask. That's what people want right now. That's how crazy it's made people. So it's that, and that's very harmful. It's like you have the option to stay away from me. You have the option to wear, I have no problem with a mask. I have no problem with anyone wearing a mask. I do not care. But if you are for someone coming over to me and putting me in a cage, holding me hostage, then we have a real problem. See, and it's all based on a lie, because you believe what the scientists say, the mainstream scientists. You believe what the government says.
Right. This is another one that I just thought of. There are 3 types of lies. There's lies, damn lies, and statistics.
Right.
But I can't remember who said that, but I always got a kick out of that, because that's what we're talking about, because people buy into scientism like we were talking about last time, and they take scientific statistics, scientism-tific statistics, however you want to say that, these scientismists that are out there, they take these statistics as 100%. And we have to realize that, we've been lied to for upon tens of thousands of years. We've been being lied to by these dark occult manipulators for so long. And it's just become so normal for people. It's just an everyday thing for people. But, Nietzsche said, I'm not upset that you lied to me. I'm upset from now on. I can't believe you. And that's what we do. We can't believe these people anymore. You can't trust these people. And that's how you're walking around in this everyday lifestyle, is that, everywhere you look, there's agents of the states. Someone who's going to call the cops on you for not wearing a mask. Someone who's going to put you in that position of being held at gunpoint for not doing the status quo and living up to this code that's based off of little to no evidence at all. And we have to be real careful about that. And this is why, most people that are in the truth community, most people who are awakened, I should say, have a real big issue with dealing with things in society. Because guess what? People in society are not trustworthy. They show it every single day. They advocate for violence to be done upon each individual, including their own children. They advocate for violence to be done onto their own children, and people still don't get that. And you want me to trust these people? Yeah, right. I'm not going to trust these people. They've lied enough. I get it. And they spread the lies. They become the ancillary amplificators of the lies. So, I'm done with these people. They have to earn their truth. They have to earn the respect by speaking the truth from now on, you know?
Right.
They have to earn that. You don't get things in this universe without working for them. And since you've already worked towards the negative, conditions, then you are going to have to work a little bit more. You're going to have to work really hard to pull yourself out. And one way by doing that is getting over the ego and admitting that you were wrong and saying,
Exactly.
hey, I was wrong,
100%. It is all ego. All ego. Based in fear, because it's just like, what we're talking about with the reptile brain, the R complex. When you're in R complex, you're in fear, you're in survival mode, fight or flight, and all your blood is just going, right up into your neocortex, and so you become very left-brained, and you want to control, and that's where ego comes from, is wanting to control. And so it's really, really important to understand that when we're in that mode, we're not thinking critically. We're not thinking balanced. And we're not really understanding that there's way more to the picture, and that we have to do the homework to really understand, that we might be spreading false information, and it's okay to come out and state. It's okay if you come out and state that you were wrong and that that you made a mistake, because we all make mistakes. We're human. And, but the most important thing, and the thing that I'm going to say over and over on this show, is stop lying to yourself and be honest, because that's really what's going to bring, a more harmonious world, where we actually do see some kind of peace here.
Well, that's how we heal from trauma, too. A lot of people don't realize this, but you have to make the unconscious conscious, or it will become your fate. And if we don't do that, like if we don't start to speak the truth, fully, then we're not dealing with all the trauma. And people don't, and maybe we can talk about this in a future episode about trauma and healing from trauma. But, you have to deal with your personal individual trauma, which is hard enough for an individual at any level, at any age, to deal with some of the traumas that we went through. But then you have to start going back even further, because you're connected to your heritage, you're connected to your species, and you have to start dealing with the trauma that's been epigenetically wired into us, because we're still receiving consequences from our forefathers and things like that have happened to our whole species, and we haven't dealt with these things at the subconscious level.
Right.
So that's one of the biggest issues, and as long as we're not living in the flow with the cosmic laws, then the ramifications will be very negative. If you try to break natural law, pretty much it will break you. You cannot break natural law. It's not a break-even thing. We will lose. That's how nature works. We will lose if we're trying to do that. That's why the dark occultists get what they get done, because they understand natural law, and they get other people to break natural law for them. They propagate these ideas down and a trickle-down effect to the lower level acolytes and people that are sitting in positions of power to do these things. I was just talking about this the other day. Everybody thinks the top of the line dark occultists are pedophiles. Well, no, they're not. And you need to realize that they're not. They have other people that are pedophiles. Yeah, maybe a few of them are, but the mass majority of them are not, because they understand natural law, and they understand that they don't want the blunt end of the karmatic repercussions falling onto them, because they want to stay in control. And they're not dumb. They're top-of-the-line psychologists, and they're top-of-the-line occultists. They know how these laws work, and they know how the mind works. And we need to recognize that they are getting these pedophiles to be a fire shield for them, and we have to understand that, we need to stop the pedophiles, but we also have to understand what's causing all of that. What's the causality of that? What is the environment? What's promoting that in our environment? And why are we seeing such a outrageous increase in that, because it is increasing. It's become normalized. And that's because the people that are at the top, the dark occultists, they know how this works, and they know how to get other people to do it for them,
Exactly. So the second question that I have for you, Brandon, is the belief in natural law just another religious stance or a religious ideology?
Well, absolutely not. First of all, natural law has nothing to do with your belief. It's a set of programs in nature. It's not personal. If a child goes to walk off a cliff, natural law isn't going to say, oh, that's an innocent child, I'm not going to enforce the laws of gravity at this point because that's an innocent child. It has nothing to do with you personally, and has nothing to do with whether you recognize it or not. The child doesn't have any idea. Its perception isn't at a high enough level of clarity to know what's going to happen to it, the full ramifications of the consequences of it falling off that cliff. There is no personality to that where it's going to say, hey, you're an innocent being, so I'm suspending natural law for this day. So it has nothing to do with your belief system or whether you know it or not. It has nothing to do with that. All that matters when it comes to whether you believe in it or not is whether you're living in accordance with it, because the results will be different if you do compared to if you don't. So it's not a belief system. It's a knowledge system. It's a truth-based knowledge system. It's just like any other law in the universe. It's discoverable. It's knowable. It's not based upon your perception. It's repeatable, and it has nothing to do with a religious standpoint either. We're going to break down the word religion here in a little bit, but it has nothing to do with institutionalized belief systems either. It is something that each individual is capable of discovering and knowing for themselves, and you don't even need to learn it from us. You can study it on your own, just from your own observations, if your mind is clear enough to do that. All you have to do is go out and watch causalities and watch the effects of those causalities, and then start to correlate the consequences of that to the causality, to what started it, and you will start to see how natural law plays out. It's very simple. It's repeatable, it's immutable, it's knowable, it's discoverable, and it's not a belief system or a religious stance in any way, shape, or form.
So basically, belief is irrelevant, and when it comes to natural law, it's definitely not another religious stance. And we're going to get into the word religion here, maybe not on this show, but definitely on the next show. So the third question that I have is, how does science prove natural law to be real and true? And that, obviously that's a very loaded question, but if you could give it just in a very brief description, I think that'll be very helpful.
Yeah, I kind of gave a little bit of that just from the last question. You can take the scientific method and you can apply it, and you can see that natural law is based on a science, that it's not just some theory or some wild notion of the mind. You can take it, it's repeatable, it's testable, and you'll get the same results every single time. And you know what? We've been getting the same results for thousands of years, and people still are dunces when it comes to understanding cause and effect and natural law. They still don't get it. Our species has been dealing with this for, who knows really how long, that we've actually been around and been dealing with this. But trust me, it's been plenty. We have had the knowledge here with us long enough to understand this science. And the only reason that we're not getting it through our thick skulls right now is mainly because of the conditions of our consciousness, and because we've been so controlled, ruled, oppressed, and mind controlled for so long, that it's starting to be, if it's not already wired into our own DNA, that we're becoming genetically wired for slavery, through epigenetics. But yeah, I mean, it is a science. So take the scientific method, and I like to use an inductive and deductive technique where they come together and you meet in the middle, like what you were talking about earlier, and then you test that and you repeat it and see if you get the same result. And if you do, you do it again, and then you have that checked by a peer-reviewed source, so you peer review that, so you have another source come in and check that work and see if they can do the same thing, and you get the same result from that, and then you go forward from there. And if that's how that works and it keeps coming back to the same answer, then that's a truth. That is a truth, no matter if you want it to be that way or not, no matter if you believe in it or not. So it's a science, and anybody can try it. Test it out for yourself. Test the law of gravity for yourself all you want.
Right, exactly.
I don't think we should be testing at this point. I think we should already know it. I mean, that the question itself, that you even have to state that question alone, shows how far from our actual goal that we need to be, how far
Right.
we are down on the scale of consciousness, just that you need to
Absolutely.
state that question shows how freaking dumbed down we really are as a species, because we should naturally, intuitively already know this.
Right. Yeah, we have definitely been veiled by, not veiled. I would say thousands of layers of veils over our eyes from what this is, because when you're living in a world of materialism, it's really hard to come to understand natural law and the science of natural law, and to see how it works and how it operates, because it's all based in ego.
It blows my mind, actually. Like, I talk to people who are super left brain, right? And I'm trying to bring them into the right brain, and I show them how this is a science, and then they get into these morally relativistic, subjective notions from their own perception, their own, I would call it a hedonistic point of view, where they want to feel good, an egotistical point of view, where they want to be comfortable about the situation. So let's say there's a situation where you have a kid. You'll hear people bring this one up a little bit. You have a kid. He's starving. He has no means of taking care of himself. He's living on the streets, and there's a market, and then he goes and he steals a tomato from a merchant, right? And they're like, is that a moral action or not? Well, no, it's not a moral action. Get over it, and you need to realize that form of theft is destroying somebody else's freedom. Now, we can get into some more details about this, is what I always bring up. Does that child have the capacity to actually feed himself in any other way? Can he go to another source? Can he grow his own food? Can he educate himself? Are there other means that this child can go through to actually get food, before he actually dies from starvation? Well, yes, there are. He's not limited. We always think of it in this extreme way, like that's the only option he has. Could he go to the merchant and ask for it, And then when he goes to the merchant and the merchant says no, now we're getting into a spot where we're like, well, is it a moral obligation then for the merchant to give over a portion of his food to that child, knowing that child's going to starve?
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, I think it's a moral obligation, It's a moral obligation to help that person. That's why it's called an obligation, and that's why it's called moral, because it's the right action that you are obligated to do in that situation. So, that's how you solve that little conundrum, that issue whenever you're dealing with right and wrong. People are like, oh, well, that's not a wrong. That kind of theft isn't that's a right. That's a theft. That's a right. No, it's not. Get over it. That
Yeah,
child shouldn't be stealing, and there's other ways that you can get around that where no theft has to take place.
Right. And it's because most people don't apply that idea to themselves. They don't apply those actions to them, like if it's being done to them. They're not wearing the shoes. And, because, and if they do say like, oh, it's right for someone to steal from me, it's like, Okay, well, it's obvious that you're lying to yourself, and the argument's over. There's nothing else I can do to help you. There's no other way I can change your mind, or whatever. You're gonna live in that lie. So the next question I have is
one more thing on that one. I know we're short on time, but I just want to add one more thing. That whole scenario there, people just want to feel good about it. They want to sympathize with the victim there, and maybe they do kind of think about it in that way, but they just don't want to be realistic. Like, hey, yeah, that's a wrongdoing, but we don't need to worry about all those trivial little acts of theft. Like yes, we need to worry about theft at an aggregate level from the individual standpoint. But what I mean is that I'm not concerned with my local thugs that are going to come and possibly steal my chainsaw off my porch if I leave it out or something like that. I'll deal with them. What I'm concerned about is a system that enshrines that as a principle or as a virtue, where they know that it's a wrong, but yet somehow it magically has been made into a standard code of virtuous conduct in society to be able to do those things, Like, right. I'm not concerned with my local thugs or the local thieves, I'm concerned with a society that enshrines the local thieves as the top pinnacle of the apex of evolution, of being civil and being, living in a moral society, quote unquote moral, because that has nothing to do with morality.
Right.
But yeah, I just wanted to add that in there.
Very well said. Yeah, so this is the fourth question. How can natural law affect me if I don't believe in it? And, that's I feel like we've kind of answered that already, but if you want to go ahead and give us a simple reason for that, go ahead.
Right. Yeah, I kind of did answer that earlier. It doesn't matter if you believe in natural law or not. It doesn't matter if you believe in what other people believe in or not. Their beliefs, they're going to act upon their beliefs, and they can go out and harm people from their beliefs. So you don't have to believe in some religious extremist and for that person to go out and do a harmful action that affects you, But with natural law, so that's a being with free will. Now, with natural law, it works out immutably. There is no free will in that, and it doesn't matter if you believe in that or not, like we stated. It's going to play out that way because it's an inherent rule or condition that's the governing dynamics for the consequences of human behavior. It's a science, So of course it's going to affect you because you exist in this realm. We exist here together, and you are bound by these laws of creation. They are deterministic, and you have a choice to either understand them, live in harmony with them, or live out of harmony with them and suffer negative consequences, that we usually don't want to suffer.
The simple way I answer this question when someone says, like, how can natural law affect me if I don't believe in it is, how can gravity affect you if you don't believe in it? It's the same way. And I know you've already kind of said that, and I just wanted to state, like, that's just the very simple way that I have dealt with people. And obviously they want to know more, and that's why I'm having you, give these answers, because there is a lot more to it. It's just when you know it, it becomes more simple to understand. Right. So, the fifth question, and once we get done with this question, we're going to end the show, and we will pick up the last question. I'll actually ask the last question before the end of the show, just so that way people know we're going to answer that question thoroughly on the beginning of the next show. But the fifth question that I have for you, Brandon, is most people will never live in accord to natural law. So why should I even try?
Well, why wouldn't you try? I mean, just because, are you dependent upon other people for you to be a good person or for you to help evolve the species? Like if your premise is that since other people aren't doing this, then I shouldn't do it, or since other people are doing this, then I should do that or shouldn't do that, then you're depending upon other people to gauge your own direction and what you should be doing based off what you understand to be true. You don't need to determine your behaviors by what other people are and are not doing, first of all.
It's like groupthink.
Yeah, that's groupthink, Another thing is that you're here to testify to nature itself that you understand these things. You're here to testify to the divine spirit, the one great spirit, that you understand these things and that you're willing to help evolve the whole, and that you are part of this, and that you understand this, and that you're awakened. It has nothing to do with what other people are doing or what they're not doing. This has to do with you. This has to do with you doing what is right and having the resolve and the care, the true care, to persistently never waver from staying in harmony with these principles.
Right. Very well said. That's something that I feel deeply has to be understood, because it seems that most people that I've come in contact with have this, groupthink mentality where, if everybody's on board with this, then I will jump on and do it. And, obviously I think there is, something a little bit inherent about that, because, you look at animals in nature and they, there's herds of animals, there's flocks of birds, they're doing what others are doing. But what has to be understood is, when you're living in accordance with natural law, and others who are living in accordance with natural law, well, you're harmonizing with them, and you're harmonizing with the law of creation, and you're already part of who else is doing it. So you're already, and I think that's what it is like most people who think that way, they don't think that they're actually, it's a materialistic way of believing that you're not part of the whole, because there's not we're not part of the one. We're just, we're all separated from each other.
Right. And it is what you're talking about. There's a sense of needing connection. There's a sense of wanting to be part of something. And this is why people fall into groupthink so easily, because we are social beings, And it sucks, but our species hasn't grown out of the idea of being herd animals, Like, that's really what we are. We're herd animals.
That's what I was getting to, yeah.
And we have to realize that groupthink is very devastating, You can't have the two without the one. So it all comes back to the individual liberties. Like, you can't sacrifice liberties and then expect to expand that out and multiply that by each individual and expect to have more liberties. That's not how it works. It doesn't work that way. Mathematically, scientifically, it doesn't work that way. Get over it, grow up, understand it, get in harmony with it. But yeah, we naturally can be together collectively, and that we live under the law of one, and when we all start to do this individually, we'll have a natural, organic community of holistic beings rather than a forced or fear-based groupthink, because it's usually based out of fear, insecurities, and things like that, where people are, very insecure, so they got to go with the flow, with the crowd, and everything like that. And it's like, we have to get over these shortcomings in our consciousness and start to be true individuals, because it all starts with the self.
Right. It's in a, a very deep symbolic way. It's about, King Arthur pulling the sword out from the stone. You have to take back your authority of the self and align with truth. And that's really what has to be deeply understood, and know that You are a water droplet in a sea of other souls. You're not separate from anyone. And you have to remember that you are an influence to everyone else, and you do have power. And if you believe that you don't have power, then you're going to stay locked in the prison, especially the mind. And it's about, remembering, to remember who you truly are, because we've been dismembered, and we have to put in this type of work to come back to that connection to nature, to the one, and take
That's
back
right, Nate.
the
Another thing I
authority.
would say is, like, why wouldn't you want to be the change that you want to see in the world? Like,
Right.
that's what Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. So why wouldn't you want to be that? Why wouldn't you want to make a better condition for all of us to live by making yourself better, and by you understanding these laws so that we do not create chaos in our lives and in other people's lives. So yeah, let's all be the change
Right.
that we want to see, and collectively we'll start to do this together. We'll all harmonize together. It's like not everybody plays the same instrument in a symphony. We all have different instruments, but we're all going to harmonize together to make a great composition of that music. So we need to understand that. Yes, some of us have the same instruments, but not all of us. So we need to unify in our task and understand where our talents are. And the base thing is hey, there's a science underneath of that symphony that we all understand, and we live in harmony with the requirements to make that beautiful, composition of music come together. And that's how it works. That's how we create great masterpieces, is by living in harmony with the requirements, and then adding our own creativity on top of those things and expanding upon those and coming together with those things. So, I
Right.
can't stand it when people are in that defeatist mentality, like, oh, well, they're not
Yes.
going to do this. Nobody's going to live in harmony with natural laws, so why should I ever do that? And it's such a weak position. It's self-defeatism, and it's fear. Let's just call it what it is. It's fear.
Right. Yeah, it's just completely the give up mentality, and it sucks because it seems like a lot of people have that.
Right.
That like where it becomes overwhelming when you know the truth. When you know that you're awake and you're seeing, you're at a high degree of being awake, and you see what's really going on. You see the beauty in nature. You see your true connection. And you're trying to help other people, and they are just like, you know what? You can open that cage door, and I'm just going to sit right here, and I'm not going to walk out because I'm comfortable in here.
Right.
Okay, so the last question that I have, or, the last question that I have for this show that we're going to answer on the next show is, why is natural law not widely known? And we're going to answer that on podcast number 16. So definitely stay tuned for that. Is there anything else you wanted to say, Brandon, before we go?
Nope. Thank you for having me on this episode, and I'm excited to continue, to put this material out there. I hope everybody has been getting something from this material. And if you, like I said last time, if you have any questions or you need anything from us personally, you're welcome to email us or contact us. My information's on the Cubbywhole website, and so is Nate's. So, let's do this together. Let's make freedom happen.
Absolutely. And, I didn't realize that all these questions were going to, take this long, but you know what? That's what has to be done. Sometimes you have to take your time and explain things thoroughly and show the examples to help people understand what these what the principles are and what the laws of nature truly are and how they operate, so that way they can, or so we can come to an accurate understanding of what's really going on, because we have a foundation. Because that's what principles are. They're foundations. That's what laws are. They're foundations. They're there to help us understand how the rest of things work. So that's all the time we have today, guys, for this show. So thanks for tuning in and giving this information your time and attention. You can find more of our work at cubbywhole.com. That's CUBBYWHOLE.com. And of course, there you will find the news updates. We're going to be talking about the S.E.E.D conference coming up next May. So stay tuned for that. There's also videos and lots more. And we hope you have found value here today. And please tune in to the next show, especially because you want to know why natural law is not widely known. So it's really important to watch these shows, these natural law shows. Like I said at the beginning, start at podcast 1 and work your way through. Or if you want to start just with natural law, obviously it's a topic that we'll be talking about all the time. But I started out the topic natural law on podcast 9. So definitely go back to that and work your way forward. And you definitely won't want to miss any show. And it's a tapestry of information. So make sure you start at the beginning so you have a better understanding. And that being said, that's pretty much all we have today. So thanks, Brandon, and thank you all for listening. Have a great day.